Welcome to this week's episode of Being Human. I'm delighted to say we have not one, but two Sahotas. We have Michael Sahota and Audree Tara Sahota. A very warm welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Now, just before we came on air, my intent was that we would spend some time looking at your latest book, Leading Beyond Change, a practical guide to evolving business agility. But we said, why limit ourselves? Why limit ourselves to just this topic? Let's broaden the frame to everything. So I'm now very excited to have a completely open exploration of the world of the Sahotas. And yeah, let's see where it gets to. Before we kick off, for people who are not familiar with you, Michael is returning guest from the show, but Audree, you're the first time for you on the show. Could you give our audience a little bit of background for each of you?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So this is a tough one. So I would say, genius scientist, software developer, manager in organizations, trainer and consultant, realizes he's a complete asshole and that he needs to change who he is in order to achieve the level of success and both personally, professionally, to create the outcomes that he wants. And then through that process of healing, growth, transformation, met Audree and realized we have the same life purpose. I'll let Audree speak to that in a moment. But really just deepening as an engineer and scientist into, what some people call metaphysics, this deeper understanding. What is the ego? How do we actually function? What are the real laws of human dynamics and as a fruit of this, we wrote one book on emotional science, another book on leading beyond change, which is, really as human beings, we've been lied to about how our emotional systems works. We don't know the truth of who we are as human beings and how we function. So really, we've created this extraordinary, path and trail of knowledge and learning. That's really an epiphenomenon of my desire to heal myself and understand how to function in the world.
Okay.
That's very good.
Thank you.
I'm the exact opposite. We always describe each other as like the Big Bang Theory, and I'm Penny. So I think I'm an accidental student of consciousness. I've been meditating since I was very young, although I didn't even know what it was. And it led me on a very strange journey in life because I kind of didn't fit in anywhere. And trying to go the corporate route and trying to fit in, I realized that accidentally I became a massage therapist to pay for going to school. And I just loved that field, and I loved everything about the body. I studied colon hydrotherapy and raw foods and nutrition and personal training. So I kind of went that route. And in that space, I started to realize that there were things beyond the physical aspects of the body, the energy field, that were popping up in my awareness. Like I was just having spontaneous experiences. And so I went to school. I actually went to school for 8 years. I'm formally trained as an energetic healer. I worked on a medical team for 5 years in Chicago with a woman named Dr. Marilyn Mitchell in Woman Care. And it was just a phenomenal experience for me. And I think the whole journey for me, even when I was in training to be an energetic healer, it was about how thoughts, perceptions, belief systems, conditioning actually create the disease in your body. And so it was a deep exploration into the psychology of disease. And for me, it became this passion for self-healing. Because if you're not a clear channel, what's going to come through you is going to be distorted and transmitted or transmuted through your own filter. So while I was very successful at being a healer, I realized that it wasn't enough, that there was something missing. Like people would come to me, it was just a strange phenomenon. People would come to me with cancer and I would give them a healing. And, I don't really think about things. And I gave them a healing. I did what I needed to do. And they would leave and not come back. And one woman in particular, for an example, came back like a year later. And she's like, I was like, oh, hi, what's going on? And she's like, well, the last time I saw you, I didn't come back because the cancer was gone. And I was like, oh, like not even calling me, not even asking questions or anything. The doctors couldn't really figure out. They thought they misdiagnosed her, which was, probably usually typical. And then she did her life. And then the cancer came back. And this happened over and over again. And so I was, really on this quest of what is going on. And I realized that there's more to just this energy work. And it led me on a really strange journey to India, where I started to study consciousness and started to really understand the technology to shift our perceptions, our beliefs, our conditioning. It takes more than just affirmations, and it takes more than just simple, or not even simple. I was like an advanced energetic healer. It took more than that. So, and that's where I met Michael. And what I started to believe was that what would be the fastest way to heal humanity? Like, I don't want one by one. There's 8 billion people on the planet. How are we going to do this? So I thought if we went into an organization and we can shift the consciousness of the leadership, that will actually change the environment of the whole entire organization. The people working in the organizations would be healthier, happier. Consciousness has to do with energetic frequencies. So everybody would be vibrating at a very high vibrational frequency. The products and services that these organizations put out into the world will also carry the same frequency. So what's happening now in an organization is it's a really toxic environment. So if you think about, if you wake up in the morning and you are in a bad mood, and then you make breakfast for yourself, for your partner, for your family, that mood, which is an energetic vibration, is carried into every person in your environment. It goes into the food that you eat. So now your kids, your partner, even the dog, like our dogs represent what's going on with us, our pets. So that goes into everything in the environment, the people, all the surroundings. So if you think about that with an organization, that's what your organization is delivering. Your organization is delivering whatever toxic environment that people are working in. And so that was my thing. I just wanted it to find the fastest way to heal humanity. And I thought going into an organization, shifting the consciousness, because consciousness comes first. You can't change how you do anything, your behavior, structures, processes, until you shift your consciousness. And I think that's why we're so passionate about what we call evolutionary leadership, which we did not invent that word. That's a longer story, but anyways, yeah. So that's why we're very passionate about evolutionary leadership. It's how we show up. What are we vibrating at? How are we reacting? What is our behavior? What is that impact into the system? And then from there, we can begin to change how we work together.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Good. So let's start with consciousness. No, I'm loving this. So people, may have a reaction to that word, right? What do we mean consciousness? What's all this? So how would you kind of break down what we mean by consciousness? And then maybe each of you could illustrate how your consciousness has shifted through the processes you've been through as a starting place.
I will give a very physiology-based example that everyone can relate to. Your level of consciousness is directly connected with the level of activation of your sympathetic nervous system. Yeah, our nervous system has two parts: parasympathetic, sympathetic. Sympathetic is the part that causes us to take action in the world. Sympathetic is the part that goes into fight or flight. We have all grown up in a society where our sympathetic nervous system is on overdrive. It is on radical overdrive. We've never really experienced levels of quiet in our sympathetic nervous system. The best we might ever experience if we go on a 10-day Vipassana retreat or go on a really, really deep vacation and do nothing. That's the most relaxed we've ever been. And our nervous system, because it's been wound up over our whole life since birth, is still not going to a neutral reset position. So what does that mean? When we're in fight or flight, which is everybody all day, all over the world, in all of our society, we're just used to it. We're so deeply embedded in it, we can't even see it. We call it stress, the chronic fatigue, depression. There are all these things that come out of this high level of stress. And what happens, and you say consciousness, how can I'm not even conscious of my own state of functioning. We are so unconscious of what's actually happening in our bodies day to day, moment to moment. When we start to become conscious of what's happening and release all this tension, all these distortions that are in our being, then we can become still and connect not just, to the internet of, tapping into the unified field of information that we all have access to. That's a built-in human function, and actually access our deepest levels of intelligence. And we can't do that. Like, there are moments we try to create it through workshops and this and that and, play and blah, 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 blah. But really a reset to a shift of consciousness requires a reset of our nervous system. So we're in a state of peace. And there are all these people who want change in the world, and we could have diversity and inclusion, and they're so angry about it. And it's like, well, how can you create peace in the world? Which is what inclusion is, when you're angry. So most people are operating from very low levels of consciousness. We don't know how our emotions work. We're out of touch with their bodies. We're not like, how often people check their phones?
Yeah.
Right? What if people check their inner state of functioning as frequently as they check their phones? They'd have a radical shift in how they function. That's what being conscious means, to be aware, conscious, with knowledge. That's the Latin root. When you're with the knowledge of what is happening, then you have power over yourself. You have power of creating your reality. And most of us are not at that place of power.
We've been duped into believing we deserve eternal punishment. And that's probably the core issue that's going on. And we have, and all it is a choice. But do we make those choices every day, every moment? And it's so hard because there's also there's kind of this addictive quality, and there's this subconscious kind of, stuff that comes out, behaviors, thoughts, perceptions that we're so unaware. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So it's
let's do an exercise.
A level of awareness.
Let's do an exercise. Let's do an exercise right now for everyone listening and all of us. Just take a moment to stop and just notice what it feels like in your body right now. You can just do a scan from the top of your body all the way down and just notice, are there areas where there's tension? There's emotions? Are there any thoughts coming up? And just notice that's our physiological state. We're not paying attention to it right now. But it's actually telling us something. It's telling us places where we're tight and contracted and not ready to just flow with life.
Right. I'm noticing I've got some stiffness in my shoulder right now, and I'm buzzing a little bit because I've had 3 coffees today. Yeah, and this makes, I resonate with a lot of what you're saying, and I see a lot of my personal growth story. If I look at it in those terms, has been about my ability to tap into my emotions, to tap into my physiological state, to get a sense of where I'm at with my thoughts. And yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. But I'd really be interested from each of you to just share a little bit then about your own journey with consciousness, like where you started when you first became kind of familiar with this idea, what you did to shift your consciousness, just to kind of illustrate it. Yeah.
Well, I think it's fair to say it's just an ongoing journey. I don't think that there was, I mean, for me, I was very conscious. I mean, it sounds kind of weird, but I've had moments of great awareness even when I was 3 months old. So I've gone back and told my parents, and they're like, no, you couldn't have been aware of that. And then I would describe what happened and what the room looked like. And they're like, oh, so I think we all have moments of profound awareness of what's going on in our environment, what our thoughts are doing, what our bodies feel like, and we go in and out. And I think that's the journey. You want to say more? Yeah.
Oh, okay. So yeah. So I'm the opposite. So Audree, a born mystic. I'm the opposite direction of definitely in the Muggle category of like, what is this stuff? My father had 2 PhDs. So like anything that remotely connected with like anything beyond what I can physical touch 3D was like, that's like crazy talk. Crazy people. Only crazy people believe those kind. That's
and
literally.
You did a part of a PhD in artificial intelligence.
Yes, I did. So
that's the Big Bang Theory thing going on.
All right. So
I haven't watched Big Bang Theory, but yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
Well, I watched it as an educational show to understand how dysfunctional I am and what kind of things I do. So, but anyway. So let me come back to the main topic. So I've approached everything like a scientist and engineer. And what happens with science, because about 500 years ago, there was a loss of any connection with investigation internally, and it has to be external, it has to be validated. And now, fast forward to quantum physics, where it says, look, you know what? There's a 3D physical world, but when you look at the inside an atom, inside, there's nothing there. It's just empty space. This world is an illusion. That's what quantum physics says. When we actually look into quantum physics and fully integrate it, we say, wait a second, everything that I'm looking at is real. I'm in this simulation. I'm in the matrix, and it's all a creation, and I'm actually creating it. That's what quantum physics tells us at the deepest levels. And so, really my exploration was, well, I don't need to believe anybody else. I can just look at my own inner direct experience and run experiments and find out what reality is. It's a very simple thing. What we do as a book in emotional science is don't believe us what your emotions are. Run these experiments to discover for yourself what your emotional system is and how it functions. And then from there, orient with what to do with it. So it's very much a scientific, for me, exploration. And also the thing is, I came to this realization that I can't figure this out myself. So I've been to teachers all over the world. I've gone to India. I've studied with various different, spiritual teachers here in the West and other parts, and to take, well, what does everyone have for their piece of the puzzle? And what's unique about me is I'm a systems creator. I'm a simplifier. So our book, Leading Beyond Change, is this simplified version of how to create a shift in leadership culture to create a high performance organization in a way that's people centric and builds on psychological safety and encouraging people to show up more responsible at every single moment so that we stop causing damage, right? So that's what that book is. It's a brilliant synthesis of all that. So there's a whole other body book, which we haven't published anywhere, which is how to take responsibility for our incarnation as a human being to understand what it is we are, how we are, and how we function. So that's really this kind of side effect, this whole body of knowledge about who we are as human beings. That's a side effect of me just trying to figure out, how do I function and how does my own physiology and the nervous system and awareness actually function?
Right. Because being a mystic, doing meditation, doing yoga, eating the right foods, all these things do not give you that information. It doesn't really put you in the position of the actual knowledge and wisdom about how you are creating your reality. And I mean, we even started this conversation this morning about like what's going on, and we're just like, oh, we're in it. Like we're constantly in this state of just really, really deep awareness. And I was talking to a friend yesterday, and I said, 20 years ago, if I looked at my journals 20 years ago, which I burned because I was still working on the same stuff. So there's a repetitive pattern that begins to happen where you start to understand that there's this layer of blockage that's not allowing us to show up, that's not allowing us to be in the truth of who we are, which is, an unconditionally loving human being that's nurturing and caring for each other. Like that's our nature. And then there's all this stuff in the way that blocks that from taking place, because moment to moment, all of a sudden in relationship, which we use relationship for waking up, for healing and growth and evolution, that moment to moment is when that trigger is going to happen. Somebody's going to do something, you're going to experience something in your environment, and it's going to react to that egoic consciousness that is actually running the show. And that egoic consciousness, I always say the word believe has the word lie right in the middle of it. That should be your first clue that whatever you believe is most likely a lie. And it could be positive and negative. So it's kind of like this mind, I want to say the F word, but it's a mind. What does Mark put? A mind truck.
Mind fuck is fine. I don't mind.
Yeah. It's a mind fuck. And then to be able to like sit in that position of can you take full 100 responsibility for everything that's happening in your life? Like you've created everything. And it's like, whoa.
Whoa, no, take a step back. Well, can you take responsibility for your incarnation? Can you take responsibility for your reactions? Can you take responsibility for your emotional state? Can you take responsibility for the negative thoughts that you're projecting out into the world? I mean, this is really, really, if we want to have a different world, we all want to have a different world. We all want this world to be better, more peaceful, et cetera, more prosperous, et cetera, et cetera. We want these social ills gone. Well, how can that happen? There's only going to be peace in the external world when there's peace in the internal world. We can't change anyone else, but we can. The only thing we have control over is ourselves. And the only path to actually step into total responsibility, take responsibility for ourselves. Taking responsibility for what we create. That's a bigger step. But starting with what's actually going on in our nervous system, our physiology. And, the paradox here is we didn't choose it, right? We ended up this way because of our life path and the conditioning that happened to us starting from a very young age. But are we going to take responsibility for it now? That's why it's about now, not about the past.
It's really hard to do that, because I think that Eastern philosophy has actually kind of all have this. It has it all figured out. You could even say most religions are speaking to the same thing, and but what's happening is, to be a compassionate leader, or to show up in a relationship with compassion and understanding, to have no judgment, it's really difficult just to be that.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the deeper issues lie, is because it's like, well, everybody's telling you to be nice to each other. But the truth is that there's all this stuff that's kind of running the show automatically that we can't even control. So, I always said there's kind of an understanding on the planet due to religion that says we were born from original sin. Yeah. Well, hello, where do we go from there? Like, if you're born from sin as a human race, then what do we do? Like, where do you go? And there's a lot of mental illness. There's a lot of psychosis going on the planet. There's a lot of just angst and anxiety, and we're in survival mode all of the time. So, and just to take it back to you personally, like, how did you wake up this morning? What is your alarm clock like? Do you wake up with an alarm clock? Is it a song, or is it bom, bom? Like, how are you going to start your day? Do you wake up in the morning and your thoughts are going, or, are you, just in a peaceful state and just clearing your mind and breathing for a few moments before your head gets off the pillow? Are you grateful for the pillow that you woke up on? These are like simple little things, but it becomes very difficult in the world that we live in to maintain a higher state of consciousness where our vibrational frequency, that's, our body's electromagnetic field is vibrating really high, and we're in a peaceful, harmonious state 24/7. And it's very, very difficult. And it's only a choice.
Right.
That's it. It's only a choice. Am I going to choose to be angry and frustrated and demotivated? Or am I going to choose to just have my heart open and non-judgmental and be filled with unconditional love? And I think that those concepts are very hard to understand. So what we've learned is the best thing is to notice that you're not that first.
Right. Yeah. 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 That resonates with me because I tell myself, I have a belief that sometimes I don't have a choice. I get overwhelmed by my trigger. I just like act, right? And it happened so quick. I didn't engage any conscious choice. But I do have a choice whether to reflect afterwards on why I was triggered, what was the pain in me that caused that reaction, and so on. So I would tend to agree. You always have a choice. It's just how close to the event is that choice. Yeah. I don't know if that does that make sense.
Yeah, no. So it's true. So I think the we always have a choice at each moment is a deeper truth, but we may not have access to that as part of our reality.
Right.
Because if the moment for choice goes by in a split second, and we've been habituated for our whole life not to take that choice, not to be aware in that moment, then we do not have access to it. It's there, but we don't have access to it.
Yeah,
and I think that's the part where we start to say, wait a second, am I really at choice about what am I creating? Right. And otherwise, if we say we're not responsible, who's responsible?
Yeah.
Like what? Like, there's somebody else running my life that's responsible for this stuff? Okay. Like, I mean, you can go with that belief state, but if you come to the place of, wait, I'm responsible for my incarnation. I'm responsible. I made that choice and I missed my chance to make a different choice. Let me just slow down and look at what is going on with my physiology. What is going on with my beliefs? What is going on with my emotional state? Right. And, or wait a second, or I'm out of control in my life. I need to take control. Like I haven't learned the tools I need to lead the kind of life I want because I don't want to show up like that.
Yeah. And having you've got me thinking about having a choice over our incarnation. That to me feels like a big one. Like I'm pretty comfortable that I've got a choice over my my emotional state. I've got a choice over whether I choose to work on myself and et cetera, et cetera. But to choose to have that thought that I chose to be incarnated into this family, into this moment in societal development, into this context, that I chose all that.
That's a bigger choice. So ultimately, that's true, but we don't recommend people deal with that unless they're ready to deal with it. The better starting place is: am I ready to take response? Let's imagine we're playing Mario Kart, and we can play Mario or Bowser or Princess or Peach or and so it's like we have that avatar now. We're in that car. I'm Mario driving in my little car, right? Like that's my avatar that I'm stuck with. Yeah. Whether I chose it or not is irrelevant, right? But I'm in it now. How do I want to live my life knowing that I'm in this Mario Kart?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Or in the Bowser car, right?
Yeah.
Or the princess car. Like we are in a car. We are in an incarnated body with certain attributes and characteristics.
Yeah.
What do we want to do with that situation? Are we ready to admit what the situation is? Are we to take responsibility and live to the fullest of what we have to work with and take responsibility for it? That's the choice.
Yeah. And Michael, you described leaving the PhD early. Was there a moment for you where you sort of became aware that you had that choice and then decided to take that choice?
Yeah. So it's been a journey of.
I'd share the story.
So there are a couple. I was studying like artificial intelligence. So there's stuff like we're studying computer vision, and I was reading this, Helmholtz talking about how all vision is just hallucinated, and I'm starting to like experience that in my life, right? Or I'm reading The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, and realizing the mind is designed to confabulate. Your mind will just tell a story based on whatever the inputs are, regardless of whether it makes any sense. It will have no awareness of whether it makes any sense or not.
Do you want to talk about the awakening?
And then there was a moment where I wasn't sleeping for a couple of weeks, and I was having relationship problems, and I woke up and my arm was flailing around on its own. I was having a focal seizure. And according to Western medical diagnosis and treatment, I was having a focal seizure. There was a minor lesion in my brain. It was congenital. It was decided over a period of years, and I was put on anti-seizure medication and antidepressants, and that was the lost year of my life. But what was really going on was the spiritual awakening, where I had this realization that all this fabric of reality was not what I thought it was. And I didn't have support or ability to deal with it or anything.
The education.
Yeah. So that's what that, that was in the 90s. Fast forward to now in, the 2020s, we're still in the same world where if people have a spiritual awakening and they think they're God, or they realize they're one with the universe, or they realize that all the constructs of society don't make any sense, they will get locked up in a mental institution and medicated. So we're in a very scary, scary world that is actually designed to prevent people from realizing the truth of who they are and what's actually happening in reality.
Right.
So how does this relate to organizational change?
Well, we could definitely I'm sure we could get
life, the universe, and everything.
Yeah. But what I'm really intrigued with, but was there a moment in that? So first of all, it was diagnosed as this focal seizure, and there's a lesion on the brain, etc. At what moment did you start questioning, maybe these guys have got it wrong? Maybe this is something else?
Oh, I didn't. I utterly figured that out 15 years later or 20 years later.
When he met me.
No. So I think
I was like, explain what happened to you again. And I worked at a place called Alternative to Meds, where there were people that were on prescribed medication to the point where they were addicted to it, or it was drastically changing how they lived, meaning they couldn't form a full sentence because they were on so much medication prescribed by the doctors. I started asking, how did you get here? How did you get here? And one by one, the story was all the same. They had some sort of experience where their perception opened up to a greater reality. They thought they were God and they were running around in the streets, or, they became one with everything, but their whole everything changed for them. Their consciousness shifted, and their families and the society in general didn't understand what was going on. They were put on medication, or they were just had massive amounts of anxiety because they were in so much fear. Like our bodies are very sensitive. We're sensitive human beings, and the world around us is pretty scary. So even for, anxiety, you're put on medication immediately. And once you're on that medication, you cannot get off of it. And, medically, you need to go to a doctor and be weaned off of the medication. Well, what happens is that doesn't happen. And you're continually prescribed more and more things because nothing is working. And then you wind up being addicted, physiologically addicted, psychologically addicted to these drugs. And then you have to go into some sort of rehab program. But the thing is that those aren't addressing some of the real issues that are going on with the, I mean, it's a longer story. So we don't have that much time.
Yeah. So just to answer, like probably one of the biggest moments was where I was reading Brene Brown's first book. I thought it was me, but it wasn't, and so on. And there's this one line of like, well, you can only be kind to others to the extent that you be kind to yourself.
Right.
And I thought, oh, well, I'm like just brutal with myself. Like my internal critics, like just off the charts. And so I thought, oh, that's how I am as a father. That's how I am with the clients I work with. That's how I am as a partner. And I decided that that's not how I wanted to show up in my life. And I created this. I was reading Jane McGonigal's How Video Games Can Change the World. So I created this game for myself called the Epic Kindness Quest, where I was going on an epic kindness quest. And so I started doing anything, running any experiment I could to try to shift the needle on self-kindness. And one of those started me joining this meditation group, which eventually led me to going on a trip to India, which, blah, 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 which I had to overcome so much conditioning and beliefs and someone stood to do that. So that was really the moment, is when really that's the wake up moment when we realized, I don't want to keep on living my life this way. Right. Right. And that's it. And once that desire is there and it's a real genuine desire, then the universe will open up and then unfold.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that as a pattern with these people who do shift their consciousnesses. It starts with some moment where they start looking in, right? That they start with you. It's perhaps to look in terms of your level of your self-kindness, but that seems to be a pattern to me. So
the technology to shift consciousness is awareness. That's why every single teaching, mindfulness, Eckhart Tolle, there's all these other teachings out there that all say, have awareness, but they don't actually tell you why, like what is the technology behind it. So the technology is that the awareness itself begins to break down the behavior pattern. And I'm just going to stop here, and because Joseph is in my head, we are not psychologists. We are not psychiatrists. We are just students of consciousness. So it's a very different thing. So anybody here that's listening to us, just let we're not medical professionals.
We're not giving medical guidance.
We're not giving.
Oh, Joseph Palrine. He's a colleague we know.
Love him. Yeah. So, and he's speaking a lot about psychological safety right now from a perspective of being a psychiatrist. So what was I saying?
You were saying the technology is about awareness.
Awareness.
Oh, yeah. So let's take for example, our book Leading Beyond Change. It has 40 patterns that talk about, hey, this is how you show up in a traditional way, traditional leader, traditional organization. And this is how you show up in an evolutionary way, in a progressive way, in a way that treats people well, treats people with respect, creates engagement, and so on. And so by taking people through pattern after pattern, people get it. It's like, oh yeah, this is the awareness part. I am operating this traditional way and I am causing damage. And wow, this is not helping me be successful.
And that's part of the technology to shift consciousness, is that not just the awareness, but the awareness of the consequence, the impact and the consequence that you're having, which is really tough. I heard somebody call it the denial effect.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's actually my current self-practice, is looking at where am I practicing self-deception? Where am I choosing to ignore and not pay attention to a disturbing thought, a contraction in my body, a drop in my vibrational field, and just kind of carry on and manage through. And that's, I've started that a couple of days ago. It's been a very, very deep, profound practice.
Right. And so the technologies here certainly in the way you've laid it out in the book is to offer people, I suppose, these invitations to become aware.
Yes. Because
of
that's
who they're
the
being
first step.
And the consequence of that, right? But to some extent, it's still external. It starts there, right? Presumably, but then the next invitation is to start to go inside. Am I right?
Well, we want to start people with the easy stuff, right? If you start to see, I mean, it's much easier to say, oh, I can see where I'm causing damage in the external world. I'm getting in my own way. If I want to be successful, I need to do something different. That's a really great starting place because we can actually give people substantial benefits without changing who they are or doing deep introspection or the hard work that ultimately is required to create a shift. It's helpful to give people an easy on road where they can start to take small steps and see the wins and experience those in their lives as a way. And this is what we say is all this stuff you can measure whether it's working in your life. Right? If it's not working, if you're not seeing the benefits, if you're not feeling more peaceful, if you don't have better relationships, if you're not more successful, then it's not working.
You know, earlier I said we've been duped into believing that we deserve eternal punishment. And I was in a course studying the Buddhist karmic wheel of life. And I'm not a Buddhist or anything, so I don't really fully understand all of it. But there was on this wheel of incarnation, there was a point where you're in a hell state. And I think that we can kind of say state. And my teacher said, this is where I got it from. We've been duped into believing we deserve eternal punishment. And that one sentence really struck me. And I became acutely aware of my own internal critic and my own lack of self-love and understanding it's not the truth of who we are. So if we start, which is really, really difficult, if we start with this inherent belief that human beings are good, like if we just come from that place first, that means that you personally, you're a good person. Your intentions, all of our intentions are to be kind to ourselves, kind to others. It goes even deeper there, but we all really, truly want to be connected. We want peace and harmony within ourselves, within our environment, with the people that we interact with. And if we come from that intention, then things can be a lot easier. I think it's a good place to start.
Yeah. And then how do we, so if we become aware that we don't have that view about ourselves, if our internal view is I'm a bad person or I'm a guilty person or I'm deserving of punishment, which of course implies I'm bad in some way. You said earlier that this isn't about affirmations. Like, where do people start then? Once they become aware that their internal dialogue is something that they could change.
Yeah. So that's a great question. So there's something I call the triangle theory of life, which is that we all were born. Well, I mean, maybe it depends on which level of reality you want to go to, but let's say we're born to completely clear. As we grow in our life, we get a whole bunch of stuff we can't deal with, right? And I call them triangles because every time there's something we can't deal with, in our nervous system, there's a triangle. One point is the belief. The second point, which leads into our actions. The second point is our physical body and physical sensation and emotion. And the third part is the energy, like holding the energetic vibration of that experience. So there's some traumatic experience that happens. Someone takes a toy away. We can't process that emotional situation. It gets stuck in our body as a belief, as this triangle, this little red triangle. And that happens again and again and again. And in our society, the way it's structured, the way our parents raised us, they're just propagating their triangles that they got from their parents down to us. And society's projecting all these triangles in us. So we're walking around. This is our incarnation.
And
we're walking around
pointy
with
and they hurt.
This cloud of triangles trying to function in the world. And so the business of what you said about how do I start to work on this is we start to find the triangles. They're right there. We just have to notice them and detriangling. And so that's where the technology comes in. That's where we can either come at it from the perspective of the beliefs and the actions, which is very simply to look at the consequences, the full consequence of that action to see how we are causing damage to ourselves. We can come in through the emotional side and the physical sensation and just simply breathe into that physical sensation. That's the technology of emotional science we created. And then we can do it from the energetic side, which is Audree's got the download for a new chakra system for humanity that allows one to completely re-regulate our emotional field and tap into high vibrational energy on the planet right now to have rapid healing. And so it's to access that high vibrational energy that's here and breathe in through our whole emotional field to purify it. So there's this energy that allows the change to happen quickly, that allows it doesn't get rid of the triangles, but it gives the energy there so the triangles can dissolve very, very quickly. And so that's really our approach of how to help people detriangle and get rid of all this crap that we've accumulated in our lives so we can actually move and be free.
Right. Our understanding is that this point in time for the history of humanity is actually a time of great evolution. And so not only do we have access to high vibrational energy, and there's all kinds of indigenous cultures around the world have spoke about this, but we have access to this high vibrational energy that the vibration is so high. The vibration, the waves and the frequency is moving so fast. It almost seems like it's still. And that acts as like a tuning fork to shift these lower vibrational frequencies or the egoic consciousness that's happening. So we're talking about, this isn't talk therapy. It's not therapy at all, but we're looking at a new perspective of how to deal with the emotional kind of hijacking or the wounding and the pain and suffering that's happening throughout our lives. And it's not about going back into trauma. It's not anything like that. It's just saying, hey, this is what's going on and I want to change it. And basically what we're doing is we're just being aware of it so deep in our awareness and breathing at the same time into what's going on, the physical sensations in our body. We're using energetic frequencies that are very high vibration to move that lower vibration and to transmute that lower vibration into high vibrational energy. And it's instantaneous. It doesn't take time. It's the only thing that determines is fast or slow of the process is your own belief system and your own perception and your own choice and desire. So again, that's like putting everything back on the responsibility of you choosing for yourself. How are you going to show up moment to moment? And the time of the guru is over. The time of the teacher is over. It's time for self-mastery. It's really time to take the knowledge, get the tools and the techniques, and have the ability to have self-mastery moment to moment. That's really our passion.
Wow. And as you say that, I'm at once inspired and sort of somewhat frustrated, right? Because my own experience with dealing with my own triangles is that it has been laborious and it has been slow and it has been a lot of allowing myself to re-presence the traumas and do the healing work and get to the tears and so on. But it's taken time. I mean, I've probably been in healing for like over a decade. So the thought of doing it instantaneously, I'm like, wow, but does that mean I'm like, could have done this a lot quicker? I suppose that's what comes out.
Okay. So as I said, I'm a systems integrator. I'm an innovator. I take ideas and I make them better and make them more practical. That's what the whole book Leading Beyond Change is about, how to actually create culture change. It's taking all these ideas that have been out there and then turning the knob up to 11 so they actually turn on and fully work. So coming back to your question here, the technology for rapid evolution has not been on this planet, right? So what happens is people go to India or people go to this person saying this thing or, jump in the vortex, right? Let's take that example. You jump in the vortex, hold hold in your mind the desired state of the future you want to create, to manifest, right? Everybody wants to manifest, right? Well, it's true, but that's not the whole truth. The whole truth is you're doing that, but you got all these freaking triangles on you. So you're actually manifesting all these triangles on you, which is in your subconscious, right? So the fact that your little tiny part of your brain going, "Woo, I want to do this," it's not going to change what you're actually manifesting unless you actually clear out all the negative beliefs and the low vibrational energy. That's what we're manifesting. We're manifesting our incarnation and all these triangles that are accumulated onto it. So that's an example of how we've had partial information. And so that's what I've done. That's what I'm saying. Like the whole work of Leading Beyond Change was just a side effect of me trying to be successful as a consultant and a trainer, helping organizations change. We figured out this whole system of how to explain to other people how to do that. Similarly, for me to figure out my own journey of healing, my own journey of how do I really live in a state of peace where I can create what I want to create and manifest what I want to manifest. It's just created this whole technology system of understanding the human physiology and how it functions and how do we actually start to navigate that very, very rapidly to create a shift in how we are. Yeah. And that's where we're stuck right now, because we've been teaching this in our advanced Academy of Leadership Mastery or Jedi School. And we're at this place of looking at how do we offer this? 5. Yeah. And well, how do we start to offer this as just, level 1 courses, and how do we bring our work out to the world? And so that's our big, I could say, called internal design challenge of having a website that reflects who we are and offering this information right to people out of the gate.
Right.
It's because we live the teaching. And so as we go deeper and evolve, like this work is an evolution of 6 years. And then me separate prior to that, and Michael separate prior to that, and then coming together and working. Everything that we've done is because we've gone through a process.
It's like we're test subjects. It's like we're running an experiment on myself. This is what I do, right? Yes. I go, oh, I got this insight, and I tried it on myself. It worked really well. And then Audree goes and tries it. Then we try it in our students.
Right. Or we're designing what at Cal 2. And I'm like, it needs something. It needs a bigger process to really unblock people. Because if we're not giving you a transformation in our course, then we're not doing the job. All the talk and all the lectures is just for your mind and your ego to think you're getting something. But the reality is that you need the process to unlock your potential and to shift your consciousness. And that's really, truly what we're doing. So we were designing a course, and I was like, oh my God, this course is so amazing, but it's missing something. It's missing that big thing. And then Michael's like, I got it. And then I'm like, okay, try it on me. And really, wow, it was so powerful.
The leadership unlock process. That was
the leadership unlock process. Yes.
Yeah, I love anyway, just to add to what Audree said, we need those moments where somebody else helps us make that shift that they've been on and done before. And we also need the day-to-day, moment-to-moment tools. So it's like the doing and the being. Like we need both elements. And that's what I think has been missing, because a lot of people can go to a Vipassana retreat or whatever. They come back to their regular world, and then it's a shit show within 24 hours, right? Yeah. Because they don't have the tools to use on a daily basis to orient and to stabilize their way of functioning.
Yeah. And that's what I love about our work is that for me, I'm very etheric and very, I can get into a really high state, and I love to meditate. But when I show up in my daily life, it's much more difficult for me to function. Where Michael has that structural functioning piece, and then not really connected to that energetic or the metaphysical piece. And so he's right now, and this, I think this is our struggle, is that he's really loves the transformational part of it and talking about the ego and consciousness. And I'm so tired of that. And I'm like, no, I want to go into an organization and I want to transform an organization. I want to take an organization and move it from a traditional way of functioning to an evolutionary way of functioning. And that's my passion. And so it's like, I'm more like, I want the structures, I want the processes, I want everybody to know that we're giving the how-to, because without, you can do, like Michael said, you could do all the meditation you want, you can do all that growth, the personal growth and transformation piece. But when you get into your daily life and you don't know how to function from that higher state of consciousness, that transformed way of being, it all starts to fold back on itself. And and right now, how it's going on the planet is like a make or break situation. And if you think about humanity, we've been functioning like this for 6,000 years. We've been at war with each other. We've been at war within our own selves. And I think it's time to change that.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm still like super intrigued. Like, I believe it. I think it is time to change that. And I think we are at war with ourselves. But if you've got this technology that allows for this instantaneous shift, right? Are you saying like shift of these triangles, right? I can identify, I can engage this in technology and poof, right? I mean, doesn't that put like an entire industry of therapists out of business, an entire industry of like retreat businesses, out of existence? It sounds like a really, important claim you're making here. I just want to sort of check I've got it.
You've got it. And generally,
what if it does?
And just to be clear,
if it does, but it's
hold on. Well, just to be clear, some people are at the stage in their journey where they do need, solution-based therapy, and they need 8 sessions and to help them start orienting and stabilizing, and that's very, very valuable for a lot of people. So I'm not ditching that. Long-term talk therapy, I mean, that's well known not to work, but people still need retreat spaces where they can go and they can have a genuine experience, where they have a reset of their vagus nerve, their fight or flight system, through sound healing or breath work or something like that, or they're sitting with somebody who's in a high vibrational state, an advanced state of consciousness, and they're in that field. And that's certainly very, very valuable, because in our day-to-day life, we're so stressed out. So we need those spaces. And that's what we do for our deeper work, is we have people here residentially for 5 days in a row, so that they're taken out of their regular life, and we actually have an environment where they actually have space and time to heal. And I like to call it like this. It's like, well, imagine you're a car and the transmission in your car is not working very well. What do you have to do to fix the transmission? You take it in the shop, you take the whole transmission, it's a huge piece of equipment, out, you put it on a table, you take it apart, it's got thousands of pieces, you find the parts that are broken and replace them. And then you put it all back together again. You put it back in the car and you put the car back on the road. That's what we do with our automobiles. We deserve to have the time and space to do that with ourselves.
But then how does that marry with you saying that you can do these things instantaneoally, right? Because what you've got described there is an instantaneous shift of the car, right? From one form to another.
So I can. I'm an expert, practitioner. For people who are starting on the journey, how big a triangle can they deal with? They can deal with the category 1 triangles instantaneously, and maybe the category 2. And then they need more training and support to learn the more advanced tools to get the level 3 and 4 triangles. But the level 8 triangles, like why wait, 10 years until you've got enough mastery, or 5 years to get under mastery the tool to deal with that level of challenge? Why not get the big ones dealt with now and get help? That's what we do, is we get help on the journey. Help from each other, help from some of our teachers, right? To get this clearing of space, so that we're living more of the truth of who we're meant to be.
And in the bigger frame is that our daily lives have not put us in the position of being able to hold that high vibrational energy for very long. So you need the tools and the techniques. Like, we stop on a daily 4 times, 5 times, 10 times, 20 times, whatever it takes when our state or our vibrational frequency is lowered. So every time somebody walks onto our property, we're impacted. Every email we get, we're impacted. Every interaction that we have with each other is impacted. Everything is impacted. And to be very, very clear, enlightenment is happening. There is nothing that you can do. You could meditate forever. You can eat raw foods forever. You can do yoga forever. You can learn tools and techniques forever. But it is actually a happening. It's a spontaneous happening. And the journey right now on the planet is that that enlightened states of consciousness, that shift in consciousness to different perceptions, beliefs, behaviors, conditioning, all of that is the way I'm experiencing it is you have that awakening. It's like you go up and then you come back down, and you go up and you come back down. So it's like there's like an integration that happens because we right now are learning how to do this in our physical bodies in relationship with other people
and their vibrational states.
And right. And it's like there's a thing that's happening that is allowing us to have this evolution slowly and consciously. And so that instantaneous is actually possible. I've experienced it numerous times, but right now they're few and far between. And they're getting closer and closer and closer as we, as a collective, change our state and become more aware and intentionally kind of working towards this and understanding that it's possible. And I think that our belief systems have told us that it's not possible, and that, people have been wanting peace on the planet for so long and blah, 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 blah. And there's so much. And it's also being very careful. Like, what are you listening to? Who are you listening to? What is impacting your perceptions and your behaviors and your beliefs? And I'll just say, if you notice that there's any sort of conflict in anything that you're listening to, music or people, or if there's any situation going on in your environment where there is conflict or separation, that is not a high vibrational state. And so we're kind of conditioned to overlook these things, and it's very, very subtle.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The expression that comes to mind from what you were talking about earlier about how these enlightenment is happening is enlightenment is accidental. It's just if we do spiritual practices, we become more accident prone, right? Like,
yeah, very good. Yeah. And then people are having these awakenings, and they're not, it's spontaneous. And then, society right now and the medical system doesn't know how to handle it. At one time, you were taken to the healer and the tribe, and they were able to support and help you. And that we don't have that knowledge anymore. So, yeah.
Right. So,
we're trying to get back there.
Right. So you're saying this healing can be instantaneous. These shifts can be, but you've got to be in the right space. It can't just sort of will it at a whim, right? You've got to work on the environment.
The most accurate description is, and this has been my experience as a scientist learning these tools, developing these tools, is that it's like we're dealing with a triangle that's a certain level of intensity, and depending on our level of tooling, they will dissolve, and it does take time. It might take 10 seconds, it might take a minute, it might take 10 minutes, it might take an hour, but some of that requires conscious awareness and attention. Some of it is an automatic process because our bodies are actually designed to automatically heal. So it's not an instantaneous process. Oh, I'm aware of it and boom, it's gone. It's like that's not, I haven't experienced that. so much. Well, a couple of experience of that. Usually it's just this choice, this consistent choice of awareness will dissolve these triangles when we stop resisting, stop fighting, stop struggling, which is a whole other understanding in itself.
Let's go back to manifesting for a moment, because I had to leave the room for a second. When we have a desire, this is okay. When we have a desire, I was trying to figure out if I was going to mention a certain teaching or not, but I'm not going to do that. When we have a desire, it's not the desire that's bad. And we've been told or taught, having desires is not really a good thing, all kinds of things like that. But when we have this desire, it's not the desire that's bad. It's not getting the desire that causes the pain and suffering. Yet what is not taught is that when we have a desire, what's underneath the desire that's actually creating that desire? And when I've looked deeply at my desires, what I find is that there is the root of that desire is always based in survival. And that comes in with fear. It comes in with trying to exist. And so it's the thing underneath that desire, that survival piece, the fear, the anxiety, the worry, the unworthiness, all these things that are sitting there in that trying to survive, that is actually blocking the desire to manifest. And so what we found in our work is that when we go to the root of that desire, like let's say you want your team to perform better than what it's doing. Think about why. Why do you want that? Like, first, what's going on in your body? Like, is there, all of a sudden there's like tightness going on, there's tension, there's anxiety, there's maybe frustration or anger. But if you go deeper, what's going on? Well, it's, as coaches, as consultants, as leaders, that's our job. Our job is to get this organization to perform. And we're kind of stuck because it's outside of ourselves. So there's survival mechanisms are kicking in because now we'll lose our job. We won't have any money to pay our bills and take care of our families. Like there's all this fear that's wrapped up into wanting to shift your organization into a high-performing organization. So what we do is say, hey, let's look at what's underneath the desire, what's pushing that agenda that you're having, and let's clear that up so it's no longer in the way. Because to manifest in this universe, if you're doing any type of pushing, which means affirmations are pushing, desire actually ends up pushing, agenda pushing, achieving, having goals, that's all pushing. And it stops the flow. And then it actually does the opposite of what you want. And then you have the pain and suffering. So we're looking at, let's clear the stuff underneath. Let's just be aware. Oh, wow. Yeah, my survival instincts are kicking in. And those instincts are not bad. They're part of the makeup of who we are. But just noticing. And through that awareness, and maybe even going deeper and seeing the impact and the consequences of that, it begins to disempower and dismantle that structure that's in us, that triangle. And it frees ourselves up in a way that's no longer the driving force that's causing the block in our system. And it's almost counterintuitive because we have not been taught how to we've been taught to make things happen, to drive change, to achieve our goals. And it's this
push forward, drive.
And really we've been raised in a command and control habit. And so this is the very thing that we're bringing people into awareness of, and then giving them the tools and the techniques to actually shift that. And then from that place, the tools and the techniques, the structures and the processes they need to transform their whole way of being, which actually ends up transforming their whole environment.
Work, family, relationships.
Life. Universe,
society.
But I'm curious now then. So if somebody does this work, they look underneath, right? And they get to, okay, this is all about me and in survival. And that's driving this desire. Am I then left without the desire?
No.
There's a really beautiful description that I heard, which is that it's wonderful to feel attraction and joy and excitement about the outcome, but not like a tight attachment to it. And it's the triangle that creates the attachment and the suffering and the drama, right? Like, oh, it'd be great if I win $1 million, but it's like, okay, but but it was when it becomes like, like a desperation and a contraction. Like, so it's really, really simple to check what's going on with you. When you think about something that you want to achieve, is your body just open and expansive and like it feels like there's uplifting, or is it contracting? And this is where awareness comes in. It's like, well, it feels kind of open, but then there's this contraction right here in my body. And that's telling you where, zeroing in where the triangles are. You can do it. You can just think about something and feel what's happening in your body.
Got it. So it's the context for the desire that's important here.
So nature is always improving itself. And naturally, we want to be in a state of peace and harmony. And naturally, from that space, we want to create. We're all part of the nature of creative intelligence. And just PS, by the way, I am studying transcendental meditation right now. So this is like a big thing in their world. So, it's the source of creation of the universe that we exist in, that we are part of, which is always in creation mode and wanting to perfect itself. And so if that's our nature, then desire is a beautiful thing. Creating is a beautiful thing. Interacting and relating with each other is a beautiful thing. Like from those spaces, if we're in that there's no conflict and there's peace and there's harmony and there's ideas and innovation that comes from that space, from there we're solving the problems of pollution and war and poverty and all of these things.
Raising amazing kids.
Yeah. But it's very, right now, I think it's first shift the consciousness of humanity, then we can deal with the problems. Otherwise, we're just sitting in a layer of muck that won't be the environmental needs, or like what we need for the environment to grow these beautiful seeds.
Yeah, that makes sense. It reminds me of you said you're into raw foods. David Wolf?
Yes.
Yeah, he's been on the podcast and he's got a line.
Awesome.
He was. I challenged him once at a talk. I was like, he was talking about all these raw foods, but they have to be flown across the world, and you can't have your coconut juice in New York without an environmental impact. And he said, that we've got to fix the environmentalists before we worry about the environment.
Yeah. David Wolf is an old timer. For sure.
Yeah, I'll just share some really like small sound bites of like really inviting people to a really a fundamentally different way of looking at reality, which is we know this truth. You can't change anyone else. You can only change yourself. And yet we don't look inward. We don't invest the time in ourselves to really, and Mahatma Gandhi said it, be the change you want to see in the world. Like we already have the script. Yogananda said, only a reformed person can reform the world. So when we start to just be really honest with ourselves and be truthful with ourselves, say, look, I want to reform the world.
Jesus said the kingdom of heaven lies within.
Anyway, but I want to reform the world. I want to change the world. I want to make the world a better place. I can't change anyone else. I can only change myself. I need to be the change that I want to see in the world. Okay, am I ready to roll up my sleeves and do that finally? Or am I going to keep on staying in my layers of self-deception and everything's okay? And the lie is I'm functioning good enough. I'm good enough now. But if you really want to create a different outcome, we need to function like a different kind of human being. If we really want to create an extraordinary workplace or an extraordinary family, we need to show up like an extraordinary parent. Otherwise, we're just carrying what our parents gave us. We're carrying what our society gave us. All these triangles that we didn't choose. That's our Mario Kart incarnation. We got these ones in this life. But do we want to take responsibility and upgrade our vehicle?
Yeah.
Beautifully said.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Beautifully said. Harder to do.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you...
Starts with choice. Choice.
I'm curious now. So when you're seeking to sell this to an organization, right, this perspective, that's pushing goals. But anyway,
it is.
We don't sell.
That's why we don't sell.
I realized the trap I set for myself as soon as I finished the sentence. When you're engaging with leaders of organizations, I guess, how do you invite them into this perspective that it starts with you?
Nobody wants this.
Well, let's start with your first question. Is top leadership at organizations go last,
right?
Because they're the most secure. They have the least need to change. What we found is people lower down the hierarchy, managers, team leads, directors, vice presidents, they're more open to change because they're struggling, because they're caught in these bullshit organizations that we're in. They are suffering. They're staying awake at night. They're stressed out about how to deal with their crazy boss and get their disengaged people to function and deliver on the results. And they're stressed out. And they're the ones who are like, okay, you know what? I got to do something different. This is not working for me. I'm ready to make a shift. And so that's where we meet them. It's not with like, okay, you got to change yourself. It's like, hey, here's some easy stuff you can start to do to notice that you're contributing and creating damage for yourself. Your people who are not engaged and are not speaking up at meetings, you are the one creating the situation. This is how you're doing it. This is what to do differently, to give them the baby script so they can start to say, oh yeah, it is me. When I change what I do, I get a different outcome. And they start to learn the truth of reality, which is when I change what I do, I get a different outcome around me. And they start to realize the truth of, this quote we use, which is the field determines the particle. When we show up differently and have a different field of energy around us, the particles around us, those people we interact with, will respond differently. We can't make them change, but when we start vibrating differently, we start interacting differently, they will change around us. And we start to witness this working in our own life. We run our own experiments. We understand this truth. Then we're ready to do more.
Right. Yeah. So you're starting by inviting people to look at how they could give themselves less stress, right? Or have a list.
We tell people when they come to trainings, everything here is optional. You're an adult. You don't have to believe us. It's you make up your own mind to what you want to believe. And it's so refreshing because most times, that's not how we treat human beings. We do not give people freedom. And when we start to operate in a different way to actually create a space where people feel psychologically safe, where their sympathetic nervous system starts to calm down and relax, and they can actually start to learn and open up.
Right. So the practical aspects of this are put out the fires first, get the work off the table, create a stabilize your environment first with things like psychological safety and really listening to what's going on within your organization. And when you do that, and we always say that every organization is different, so we can't give you this cookie cutter, prescription. We can only point you in the direction of what to do first and how to listen to your organization and stop causing the damage. And from that place, you'll with the frameworks and the teaching and the tools that we have, it's like then you can use your education, you can use your experience that you've had as a leader working within this organization and all the other experiences that you have to make the right decisions, to pick and choose the right moves to make from that place.
Sure.
And so I think people are they want to be told what to do. They want some cookie cutter framework. We're more like an unframework. And
it's called the self framework for a reason.
Yeah. The Shift 314 Evolutionary Leadership Framework, otherwise known as the self.
Yeah.
But we're applying these universal principles and the laws of organizational dynamics, so that you can implement these concepts in the space of your organization, your workplace in particular, although these things can be applied in your personal life as well, because how you show up in one place is how you show up in another place. So, our passion is that this is doable. Our passion is that we want to impact and create sustainable change, not some fast paced, buy this framework and do this thing and you'll be fine. And it's like, what we're seeing is that there are all these frameworks to work differently in organizations and nobody's receiving the benefits from them. And so what Michael has been advocating, and then when we got together, we've both been advocating, is that you've made these investments in these frameworks and you don't want to lose your $100 million investment that you just implemented across the entire organization. But our unframework is that we're the foundation in which all frameworks can receive, or you could realize the benefit from all of these frameworks, because we're going down to the fundamental layer of the people, because your people are the ones that are going to be implementing these frameworks. So how are the people showing up? How are they self-aware? And then where are they able to see within the organization, moment to moment, the impacts of what's going on in the environment, and how can they shift and change and mold the organization into high performing while keeping all the people happy. We do a piece on navigating complexity. And for a long time, I was like, this is really important. Navigating complexity is super important. David Snowden had like a brilliant idea. What we've done is we've taken that framework and we've pulled it back, and we've really started to look at what's going on with the people within this VUCA environment that we're in, and how do we show up in that complex environment and make the right choices. And there's a lot of things that you need to see. And I think that's what's so brilliant about Michael, is that he's able to unpack a lot of these different concepts. We take them apart, like the transmission. We take them apart because you need to have awareness at each place within those concepts to understand how are people reacting and how are people behaving within those concepts. So for instance, navigating complexity. Well, how do you navigate complexity when you have no psychological safety?
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah. You can't do experiments, right? If it's not safe to fail.
No.
Yeah.
And even, we talk about the word failure, even the word failure, that freaks out the whole entire, the board, the stakeholders, the all the leadership, safe to fail. Oh my God, you're already talking about failure. You haven't even started. Well, of course, nobody's going to like that. So even changing that word, safe to try, being able to run an experiment and learn from it. Take the word failure out because it has immediate connotations and it'll block you immediately from being able to achieve anything.
And I can see how that comes from the insight we started the show with, that everybody has their sympathetic nervous system up to 10, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because so somatically, if you're saying fail, then you're going to fail. Did I say that right?
Well, you're going to activate the sympathetic nervous system even more, and it's going to become even more triggered and tight, and the blood supply to the frontal cortex will drop off. And yeah.
So, let's try this experiment and see what we can learn.
Yeah. Simple trick. Stop failing fast and switch to learn fast.
Learn fast.
Learn fast. We have an environment where we learn.
Let's just learn. What can we learn from this?
Yeah.
And we're the ones creating our environment. So as a leader, we're building the brilliance and intelligence of everybody that is on our team. That's what a leader does. We're holding the system. But because we're the ones that are holding the system, it's our energetic imprint that is actually going to go into the system. So remember I said the toxicity of your organization will bleed and leak out, and that's what you will deliver. You will deliver the toxicity.
Yeah. Quite literally in some products, right?
Yeah.
You ship your team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your team creates the products and services that your organization is offering. And if your team is toxic, that's what you'll be shipping. And your customers will feel it. They might not know what's going on, but they will feel it. I think the Dalai Lama used to pick who made his food, and because he understood the impact of what he was eating. If the food, there's a story somewhere about somebody, a murderer making.
No, that was Gandhi. Gandhi was in prison because he was, peacefully trying to liberate India from the British, and he ate some food, and he was like
having murderous thoughts.
Having murderous thoughts. He goes, who cooked for the food? It's so and so in the kitchen. They're a murderer. And he goes, oh, okay, now I know where it's coming from.
Yeah. So we are unconscious of the impact that we all have on each other. And I feel like this is really, really important. And, going back to leaders, people that create product or services and they birth an organization are usually functioning at a very different level of consciousness, because they could manifest this. They've taken this idea and they've actually brought it into the world. But things always get hijacked. And not everybody that invents or brings something out into the world is like this high conscious being. But I can make a generalization here to say that if you have this brilliant idea and you could manifest it out into the world, then there's something very, very different about who you are and how you're functioning. And it's never the intention of a leader or an owner of an organization to make things worse. or to oppress people or to treat, people in an unhealthy way. What happens is that the system becomes hijacked, and the more people that there are in the organization, the more you think that you need processes and structures and rules. And the more rules that there are, the more people that you need to enforce those rules. Everybody is coming from this traditional mindset. So they're in command and control because they don't know any other way of functioning. And it just gets repeated down throughout the organization. And soon enough, you have 300 people, and then you have 1,000 people, and then you have 10,000 people, and nobody's functioning at their potential. And I don't think it's any founder's intention for that to happen. It's just an accidental, what do you say? It's a non...
No, it's just how our societies function. It's not anyone's fault. It's a non-personal, transgenerational problem, right? It gets passed down for, everyone around us. Yeah. But we're just stuck in it. And so this is what we're trying to do is like, hey, everyone, wake up. Yeah. Wake up.
Yeah. Yes.
We're not woke people.
Yeah. Sorry.
There's a very
anyway, I don't know if that has some other I'm not
say that.
Anyway, but it's like waking up to the truth, the reality of what's going on within our own physiology, our own nervous system, what impact our behaviors are having to make a different choice.
Yeah. Awake people, perhaps. Yeah. And just as you was describing there, Audrey, about this sort of this tendency of organizations to go in that direction. Are you familiar with Jerry Pournelle's iron law of bureaucracy, right? That whenever you start a bureaucracy, eventually it becomes dominant in the organization.
No, I don't read anything.
And the bureaucracy ends up serving its own needs and not the purpose of the original organization. It's like,
yes, it gets lost. It always gets lost in translation. Like, look at Google right now. Google used to be very, very people-centric, and they had an amazing culture, and then leadership changed. I didn't even know leadership changed until I was just looking in the career page, and all of a sudden they had a human resources department. And I said, wait a minute, why does Google have a human resources department? I thought they were like people and Googlers, like the department, the name changed.
Okay.
And that's when I found out that the leadership changed, because we don't watch the news and we don't keep up with like current events like that. And so I just thought that was really interesting. And what we've been talking about and talking to is the strength of the leadership and how the leadership is the one that's holding the transmission of the organization. And really, really important to be aware of that.
And the truth is, every time you bring someone to an organization, you're bringing them at their level of consciousness.
Yeah.
And so if they're a manager, they're going to take their department and it'll operate at their level of consciousness, right?
Yeah.
And so that's one aspect. The other aspect is, as a reflection of that, they're used to these traditional ways of working, so they just bring those in as well, right? So if you go to like a company like Semco, Ricardo Semler was so frustrated that they couldn't hire people who could show up like responsible adults who take responsibility for themselves, that he started a school for kids, right? And that's the situation we're in. That, to go back to why is this happening? We're trying to grow these companies, and we're staffing from this world of people who show up in certain ways. Unless you're a very rare company, like go to another case study of Valve. They said hiring was the most important thing in the universe, and they only hired people who are extraordinary capable of self-leadership and self-responsibility. And so, unless we're super selective in the people, the people you hire determines the culture of your company.
The people on your board, the stakeholders, everything makes a difference. Everybody makes a difference.
Yeah. Okay. Sometimes the feedback I get on this podcast is that, Richard, you go to all too fluffy and you never give us anything practical. So let's just think about if we were to let's just imagine this manager who's sort of stuck in the organization and is feeling the stresses of it all. If you were to, and I know there's a ton of things that you offer in this book, Leading Beyond Change. If there was, say, like 3 that you would pick that you might offer somebody in that situation who's feeling perhaps a little overwhelmed, for them to experiment with, what might they be?
I'll say the first thing, and then you can go. The very, very first thing is to take a moment for contemplating. How frustrated are you? How much do you not believe that things can change?
Mm-hmm.
I think that in itself, just noticing, wow, I'm really internally, I'm really stuck here. And just sitting with that for a while.
The next one, I think they'll become very honest with yourself. Be very honest with yourself of how much do you actually really want things to change? And then look at how, let's say over the last year, how much have you actually done to change how you are functioning as a human being, as a leader? Like what is your level of investment in your capability, your functioning, whether it's, clearing out the triangles or whatever model it is, but how much effort have you actually put in? And be really honest with yourself that you really have not been valuing making a difference and changing what's happening around you because you haven't been putting that energy into changing how you show up.
Okay, now other practical stuff.
Well, that is practical because without that starting place, so I'll go back. So just very practically, the book Leading Beyond Change is designed to shift your consciousness. There's every pattern has a set of exercises you can go through that'll help you reflect on traditional ways of working that are causing damage. And this is only for people who want to be more successful. That's what it's designed for, to help you look at what anti-pattern you might be using that's causing damage, where you are getting in your own way, and how to start operating in a different way. So that would be a very, very practical.
Like how to build culture bubbles. It has decision making. It has super practical stuff. It's like how to do one-on-ones with your team in different employee engagement models, like how to solve problems from the aspect of not just tactics and strategy, but looking at the culture, which is the root cause. So it's like how to solve problems from this model.
Okay, I got another one. So I'll give you another really very practical one. Every place you want to achieve something and make something happen, just take time to listen and know what other people think should happen instead of what you think.
I like that. Yeah.
This is really simple because you'll see how addicted you are to your own version of reality that actually ignores everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And creates a lot of damage.
What about a high performance meeting protocol? That's a good practical.
Oh yeah. Another good one is in meetings, when you want to solve a problem and you want to say, hey guys, I think we should do this. What do you think? Don't do that. Instead go, hey, we want to solve this problem. What are people's ideas? Everyone share. Everyone else will listen. At the end, we'll have a conversation, and you share your ideas and your brilliant idea last to give other people a chance to contribute and be leaders and develop.
Yeah, it's one of the things I highlighted in the book, actually. Reverse the order of who shares first. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah. And there's a lot about decision making and invisible fences. And it's really a practical guidebook. Like we have one of our students, he's got tabs throughout the whole entire book, and he just has the book with him at all times. It's a brilliant. We have a photo of it, and he goes,
"Oh, it's my Bible." He goes, "Oh, but I'm not going to call it a Bible." but that's what it is. It's like, hey, this is how the universe works, we have a choice. We can go in a traditional route and cause damage, or we go in evolutionary route and create more of the outcomes we want.
And if you go to our website, shift314.com, we have Leading Beyond Change. We have 3 free chapters. So you don't have to buy the whole book. You could just download the chapters and you can see if it's of value. Because I think the biggest thing that we can even end with, maybe if this is the end, is that do not believe a word that we're saying, because what we say doesn't matter. You can read a million books, and what those books say doesn't really matter. It's what your own experience. You can have the knowledge, but if you don't have the experience, then that knowledge is not yours. It's somebody else's. So it's really taking that knowledge and bringing it into experience where it then becomes your wisdom.
Try it out, run the experiment, make it your reality.
Yeah. Okay. Good. A call to experimentation. I love it. I suppose when you referenced Gandhi, that's where he started, right? I think he had this very experimental mindset. He started experimenting with food and going vegetarian. And, awesome.
Well, yeah.
Okay. Sorry, go on. You were going to say, Audrey?
No, I was just gonna. My insight with Gandhi is the way he came up with that sentence, "Be the change you want to see in the world," is because he realized if he wanted peace on the planet, he had to resolve the conflict within his own being. And from that, he was able to have experience extraordinary feats of days and days and days, I think months of not eating. Like, he developed extraordinary abilities within his physiology and in his consciousness. So Be the Change came from that personal experience to say it's not just a writing on the wall. It's like, no, you actually have to be that thing that you want to see in the rest of your environment. Yeah.
I think a lot of people are familiar with it, but there's that situation where the mother comes to him and says, "Hey, how do I get my kid off sweets?" And he says, "Go away, come back in a week." And then she comes back and she says, "Okay, well, why did you have to go?" "Well, I had to stop eating my sugar myself before I could advise you on this." Yeah. Great. All right. Well, thanks once again. We'll put the link to the book "Leading Beyond Change" in the notes. And I do concur. This is full of practical advice. And
if it's not practical, it's not worth it.
Beautifully illustrated. Anything else? Where else would you point people if they want to get more from the Sahotas?
Emotionalscience.com.
Right.
And that has a beautiful little video and also access to the book. And that book also comes with a free download of the Get Clear technique, which is a 10-minute technique that you use moment to moment to actually the disturbance that's your inner state, your inner physical body. It just releases all of that within 10 minutes just by breathing.
Great. I could use that with my kids sometimes, I'm sure.
Exactly. They'll love it.
No, yeah. I meant for me. And I'm getting triggered by them.
They'll love it when you use it.
So you're right. Yeah.
You can all stop and do it together and just breathe. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, we'll put those links into the description for the show. All right. Perfect. I guess it's just time to say goodbye and to close and to thank you both.
All right.
Thank you so much for allowing us to be here. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've really enjoyed it. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.